Hello everyone, I'm Captain Logan, and welcome once again to the dark and ghoulish comic book vault. As you can tell, I look a little bit different today. I've decided to finally go with a bit more of a clean-cut, shaven look. I haven't shaved my beard completely off in 4 years, and finally decided it was time for a change. So I wanted to warn you about that, because we shoot quite a few of our videos ahead of time, and so for the next couple weeks, some of our videos are going to look a little bit inconsistent, because I have shot this after quite a few things that we're actually going to post as time goes on. So you've been warned about that. Today we're going to take a look at an early issue of Daredevil. This is Daredevil number 91 from 1972, and it's by Gary Conway and Gene Colan. And it being Gene Colan, the art is absolutely fabulous. It's not the most thrilling issue of Daredevil I've ever read. On the cover, it says, "You have nothing to fear but Mr. Fear." And unfortunately, Mr. Fear ends up being a little bit less of a scary villain than he is led on to be in the cover. This is, in fact, the second Mr. Fear, and we come to discover that the first Mr. Fear actually died, as everyone suspected, but in his last breath told the guy who ends up being Mr. Fear here where his costume and all of his equipment is, because he's afraid that this guy will kill him if he doesn't do that, and of course he ends up dying anyway. So, basically where we're at the beginning of this is Daredevil and Black Widow, and in case you only know Black Widow from current comic books or from the Avengers, Black Widow did have a stint where she was dating Matt Murdock, and where she and Daredevil were actually crime-fighting partners. And at the beginning of this, after they both become totally paralyzed from Mr. Fear's fear toxin, that's right, Mr. Fear also has fear toxin, but it's actually a little bit different than Scarecrow's fear toxin, because it doesn't cause hallucinations, it just causes paralyzing fear. So you just stop and you can't do anything, and it's kind of amusing how the thought bubbles read, because they're not actually scared of anything in particular. They just say, "Oh no, it's that paralyzing fear that always happens when we're hit by this fear toxin." So anyway, again, a little bit less scary than Scarecrow. And what ends up happening is Black Widow gets upset with Daredevil because she doesn't feel like he's treating her enough as an equal. And this being 1972, it's no surprise that there is a bit of a hint, or maybe more than just a hint, of women's lib going on, and Daredevil is played as being totally in the wrong here, and you know, with good reason, the way he's acting. Basically, every time she has a problem with him, he calls her honey or kid, and that one really bothers her. She says, I'm not anybody's kid. I mean, remember that Black Widow is a former mercenary. You know, she spent all of her time going out and stealing things and doing, you know, bad things for people for money. I'm not sure if the Black Widow I don't know a great deal about Black Widow in the comics. I know that the Black Widow in the film continuity has even a darker background than I think she's supposed to in the comics, where she's actually killed some people. I don't know if that's true in the comic books. Someone leave a comment and let me know. And don't lynch me, I just don't know a great deal about the character. So it's interesting to see her here, but she talks a lot more about being a former thief here, really, than a mercenary. And so she goes off from Daredevil and kind of goes on her own. This is the last straw. She's had enough of Daredevil not treating her enough as a partner and more as a sidekick. So she runs off and decides to do some detective work on her own, and she goes to a man named Danny, who she had once worked with when she was a professional thief, and they together stole something called the Energy Globe, which is the thing that causes the paralyzing fear that Mr. Fear is doing to Daredevil and to Natasha. And what happens is she finds out that Danny actually is completely on the level, and though he has possession of the globe, he's not been using it, and so the plot thickens, and we find out that he's actually been legitimately helping people who have been blackmailed and actually isn't part of the black market or anything like that anymore at all. And so Daredevil, meanwhile, goes off and, through his own detective work, finally discovers who Mr. Fear is when he stumbles upon him pretty much on accident, just doing some research when he goes to a lawyer friend of his, and the lawyer's assistant he comes to discover is actually Mr. Fear. And it's basically just a matter of workplace disgruntlement, where this guy doesn't like the fact that Matt Murdock is more popular than he is and better at his job than he is, and he never amounted to as much as Matt Murdock, so it's kind of a basic revenge story. He hates Matt Murdock because Murdock was always being talked about in school when he was going through school, and he never got any credit for anything, and he hates his current boss because, I suppose, because his current boss is sort of a jerk, but also better at his job than he is. So he just hates everyone and is disgruntled with the fact that he never gets his due for anything he feels. And so yeah, he's just an angry, nerdy-looking, disgruntled worker, and that's why he becomes Mr. Fear, which was a bit of an anticlimactic kind of ending. But I did really like the idea that he was able to very quickly put two and two together and figure out that Daredevil was Matt Murdock, because at the same time as Natasha Romanoff moves to New York and starts dating Matt Murdock, Daredevil and the Black Widow are seen together, and the Black Widow, I don't know if it's that the Black Widow is known as being a Russian exactly or not, but he's able to put two and two together and be like, well, she looks kind of like Natasha Romanoff, and you've got a Russian woman working with an American superhero, and you've got a Russian woman dating this American, and he puts it together. And I thought that was really clever, because I think that's actually kind of how it would be. This kind of thing happens all the time in comics, where you get two people together, both in costume and out of costume, and you would figure that eventually somebody would figure it out just from that. So I really did like that about it. Other than that, though, it's honestly, again, not the most thrilling comic book I've ever read, but I did really enjoy the very detailed and gritty-looking artwork. And Mr. Fear is kind of scary looking, and could have been a lot more fun if he actually had, more intense motivations than just being a disgruntled, not very good at his job lawyer. I like comic books that can take a costume that looks kind of absurd and make it look scary in the context of the book. So, like, he's wearing deep purple, but he's still a little bit creepy. And or it could have been played as very, very creepy, but ultimately, as creepy as the cover looks, the book doesn't really do a whole lot with him. And the only thing that I was a bit shocked by was at the very end, he actually jumps to his doom on accident. He has this rocket pack, and he has these jets, and he jumps off the roof and totally forgets his jets. And Matt's like, "Wait, man, don't forget your jets." That's actually what he says. And the guy leaps to his doom, and he's dead. And then at the very end, Natasha has left the city while Matt was stopping this guy, and is apparently not coming back. And that's kind of how it ends. So I don't know. It's got some good. It's got some bad. It's definitely interesting, and it's in this kind of strange transition period, I think, for Daredevil, where it still had a lot of the kind of lighthearted dialogue, and is still a little bit overly dramatic and kind of overwritten, and yet is starting to go quite a bit more in the kind of gritty urban sort of storytelling that stays that way for a really long time, all the way, through Frank Miller and beyond, and through Frank Miller and beyond. Anyway, that's Daredevil number 91. Thanks as always for watching the Comic Book Vault. Hope you enjoyed it, and if you've ever got anything that you'd like to send to me or Vince to review, if you've got any single issues or trades lying around that you don't want anymore, or anything that you're just desperately hoping that we'll review and we might not have on hand, feel free to send that to our P.O. Box if you'd like. That's Geekvolution, P.O. Box 14183, Lenexa, Kansas 66285. And thanks as always for watching. I'm Captain Logan, and happy reading.